The story opens with the male narrator, a 25-year-old man in the delicate phase of adulthood, where life feels like a series of unfinished sketches. He's observant, quietly reflective, and carries a subtle longing for connection that he doesn't yet understand. The first scene places him in an everyday yet intimate setting, a local cafe tucked away on a tree-lined street. The kind of place where sunlight filters through dusty windows and the aroma of roasted coffee beans hangs in the air. This ordinary environment is crucial. It grounds the story in realism while allowing room for emotional depth to blossom naturally. She enters, an older woman, 42, graceful in a way that commands attention without demanding it. There's a quiet confidence in her presence, the soft sway of her hair, the deliberate ease of her movements, and the gentle warmth in her smile that hints at life experience. She carries herself with poise, but also vulnerability, evident in the slight hesitation as she scans the cafe for a place to sit. The narrator notices small, telling details, the curve of her neck as she tilts her head, the subtle tremor in her fingers as she adjusts her scarf. And these details make her human, relatable, and magnetic. The emotional goal in this part is subtle intrigue. The audience should feel the narrator's immediate, almost accidental fascination, a mix of admiration, curiosity, and a gentle, unspoken pull toward her. His internal monologue reflects a careful observation of her gestures, the rhythm of her speech, and the softness of her laughter, all without being intrusive. He notices how she orders her coffee with thoughtful precision, and the way she pauses to appreciate the warmth of the mug in her hands, as if savoring more than just the drink. Their first interaction is small, understated, a brief exchange over a shared table, a smile that lingers slightly too long, a casual compliment that carries weight. The physical affection is minimal but meaningful, a brush of hands as she reaches for the sugar, or his hand briefly touching the edge of hers while handing over a napkin. These tiny gestures ignite the subtle tension, hinting at an unspoken connection. Sensory details are key here. The warmth of her hand, the faint scent of her perfume, the way her eyes meet his in fleeting but deliberate glances. Conflict begins to form internally. The narrator questions the appropriateness of his feelings, the societal assumptions of their age difference, and the nervous excitement stirring in his chest. Meanwhile, she appears equally intrigued, masking her curiosity with calm composure. The audience is drawn into this silent dance of attention and restraint, sensing the potential for romance without rushing toward it. By the end of this first part, the scene closes with the narrator stealing one last glance as she leaves the cafe, her presence lingering in his mind like the echo of a favorite melody. The emotional thread is set, intrigue, admiration, and the quiet spark of attraction. The audience is left with a sense of anticipation, eager to see how this slow, deliberate connection will evolve, while already feeling the warmth and tension that defines the story's tone. Following the first encounter, the story shifts to the subtle, almost serendipitous moments that pull the male narrator and the older woman closer together. The goal of this part is to deepen curiosity, highlight their emotional contrasts, and build tension through repeated, seemingly accidental interactions. The audience should feel the slow, irresistible gravity of their connection, as if the universe itself is nudging them toward each other. The narrator begins noticing her in the spaces he frequents. The same bookstore where he lingers by the philosophy section, the art gallery hosting a quiet exhibition, or the sunlit park where he reads in the late afternoons. Each encounter feels accidental at first, yet the repetition sparks an unspoken recognition, a subtle rhythm of presence that hints at fate. The writing should emphasize sensory details, her hair catching the sunlight, the soft rustle of her coat, the warm aroma of her perfume blending with the scent of old books or fresh grass. These observations anchor the audience in his perspective while enhancing the intimacy of his attraction. During these encounters, their interactions remain understated but meaningful. Perhaps she offers a small smile when he struggles to reach a book, or they exchange a casual comment on the art exhibit's theme. Physical touches are minimal but charged with warmth. A hand lightly brushing his arm as she passes by, or her fingers grazing the edge of shared bench when they sit together outdoors. These fleeting moments carry emotional weight, hinting at a connection that neither fully understands yet. The emotional core of this part revolves around curiosity and hesitation. The narrator grapples with his growing attraction and the internalized questions about age difference and social expectation. The audience should sense his admiration mingled with guilt or self-doubt, heightening the tension without forcing drama. Meanwhile, the older woman shows subtle signs of vulnerability beneath her poised exterior. Lingering glances, a soft laugh that seems slightly hesitant, or a fleeting pause when he speaks. These hints create a mirrored intrigue, showing that her interest mirrors his own, even if unspoken. The narrative also allows moments of introspection. The narrator reflects on what draws him to her, not just her beauty or elegance, but the calm assurance in her voice, the wisdom implied in her gestures, and the gentle steadiness she brings to ordinary moments. These reflections deepen the audience's understanding of his emotional landscape, making his fascination relatable and compelling. By the end of Part 2, the story establishes a rhythm of anticipation. Their meetings, while casual and seemingly coincidental, become charged with the tension of unspoken possibility. The emotional payoff is subtle. The narrator notices the lingering echo of her presence long after she leaves, and she, in turn, seems drawn to his quiet attentiveness. The audience is left with a sense of a connection that is gradually solidifying, fragile yet undeniable, and eager to see how it will evolve when circumstances force them into more deliberate interaction. By the third part of the story, the accidental encounters of Part 2 have set the stage for a more deliberate interaction. The male narrator and the older woman are drawn together not by circumstance alone, but by a mutual curiosity that can no longer be ignored. This chapter focuses on emotional intimacy, allowing both characters to reveal glimpses of their inner worlds while maintaining the subtle tension that defines a slow-burn romance. The scene could take place in a neutral, quiet space that naturally encourages conversation, perhaps a secluded corner of the same cafe, a bench in the park at dusk, or a small art studio where she volunteers. The sensory atmosphere is key. The soft hum of conversation, the warm glow of lamplight, the gentle rustling of leaves outside. These details frame the intimacy of the moment, making it feel personal and alive without overt romantic gestures. Their conversation begins casually, but gradually drifts into deeper territory. The narrator notices nuances that hint at her life experiences, the careful way she chooses her words, the way she pauses thoughtfully before sharing, and the subtle emotions that flicker across her face: melancholy, humor, or a wistful smile. The narrator, in turn, speaks honestly about small, relatable aspects of his life, revealing vulnerability in his own way. These exchanges establish a mutual trust, letting the audience feel that this connection is more than fleeting attraction. It is grounded in emotional resonance. Physical gestures are small, yet meaningful. The brush of her hand against his as they reach for the same object, the subtle lean of her shoulder toward him as she listens, or the quiet moment when he offers a comforting pat to her hand while she laughs nervously at a shared story. These touches are deliberate but understated, emphasizing the warmth and human closeness that defines their bond without rushing into romance. Each gesture carries the weight of trust and budding affection, allowing the audience to feel the tension and anticipation growing between them. The emotional core of this part lies in vulnerability and hesitancy. Both characters wrestle with their own doubts. He wonders if his fascination is inappropriate due to the age difference, while she silently weighs the social implications of her interest and the memory of past experiences. Their inner monologues reveal conflicting feelings, desire intertwined with caution, admiration mixed with fear of judgment. This tension is the heartbeat of a slow-burn romance, keeping the audience invested in the subtle progression of their connection. By the end of part 3, there's a palpable shift. The characters are no longer merely intrigued by one another. They are emotionally engaged. The narrator leaves the encounter with a lingering awareness of her presence, recalling the softness of her voice, the quiet steadiness of her gaze, and the faint warmth of her hand against his. She, in turn, seems equally affected, reflecting on the unusual comfort and honesty she felt in his company. The audience is left with a sense of anticipation and emotional resonance, ready to follow the story as their connection deepens further in the next stages. By part 4, the story shifts from gentle curiosity and tentative emotional connection to conflicted emotions and subtle tension. The male narrator and the older woman have established familiarity, trust, and unspoken desire, but external and internal pressures begin to surface, testing the boundaries of their connection. This part's goal is to deepen emotional complexity, creating a believable pause before the romance escalates further. The setting for this chapter should heighten intimacy while allowing space for reflection. Perhaps they meet in a quiet art gallery after hours, a rainy afternoon cafe with the patter of raindrops against the window, or a dimly lit bookstore where whispered conversation feels safe. Sensory-rich details anchor the scene. The warmth of a steaming cup in his hands, the soft scent of her perfume mingling with the old paper of books, the low murmur of rain masking their conversation. These small details make every interaction feel immediate and alive. Conflict arises subtly through hesitation and self-consciousness. The narrator wrestles with his attraction, aware of the age difference, and uncertain about how to navigate social norms. Internally, he analyzes every glance, touch, and smile, questioning whether he is overstepping boundaries or misinterpreting signals. Simultaneously, the older woman experiences her own hesitation. She notices her own flutter of anticipation, but worries about propriety, past experiences, and the implications of a relationship with someone younger. This emotional push and pull heightens tension without overt drama, keeping the audience emotionally invested in the slow burn pace. Their dialogue mirrors this tension. Words are measured, thoughtful, sometimes faltering under the weight of what is left unsaid. She might ask a seemingly casual question about his future plans, yet it carries subtle curiosity about his emotional world. He responds cautiously, revealing parts of himself, but also masking deeper feelings. The unspoken layer of meaning in every exchanged sentence creates a sense of anticipation and intimacy, as if the audience is privy to a delicate dance of hearts and minds. Physical affection in this part remains small but meaningful, emphasizing emotional weight over romantic action. Perhaps their hands brush briefly over a shared book, or she adjusts his scarf with a deliberate gentleness that lingers. A soft glance or the tilt of her head toward him conveys more than words ever could. Each subtle touch or moment of closeness reinforces the growing tension and the character's unspoken longing. By the end of part 4, the emotional stakes have risen. Both characters are drawn irresistibly to one another, yet the weight of hesitation prevents immediate gratification. The narrator walks away, acutely aware of her presence, the echo of her laugh, and the warmth of the brief touch they shared. She lingers as well, reflecting on the rare ease and safety she feels around him. The audience senses the tension reaching a peak. Romantic desire is clear, but restraint and inner conflict create a slow-burning anticipation, priming viewers for the next part where moments of vulnerability and confession may finally bring them closer. Part 5 marks the emotional crescendo of the story, where tension built over previous encounters begins to transform into deep connection. The male narrator and the older woman are now confronted with their own desires, insecurities, and the subtle weight of societal perception. The goal here is to showcase a moment of vulnerability and heartfelt confession that allows their relationship to deepen, without rushing into romance or breaking the slow burn pacing. The setting should enhance intimacy and quiet reflection. A private, serene environment works best. A softly lit living room during a rainstorm, a quiet walk along a dimly lit riverbank, or a secluded garden at twilight. Sensory details are crucial. The gentle tap of rain on leaves, the faint warmth of a scarf pressed between their fingers, the subtle scent of her perfume mingling with the crisp evening air. These elements allow viewers to feel the moment as much as see it, creating a sense of closeness and shared presence. The emotional focus is confession and shared vulnerability. Perhaps the narrator speaks first, hesitating as he admits how captivated he is by her grace, intelligence, and warmth, framing it through admiration rather than romantic expectation. The audience should hear the careful deliberation in his thoughts, the nervousness, the thrill, and the fear of overstepping boundaries. He may pause, glance at her hand resting nearby, or notice the softness in her eyes, allowing the tension to simmer in the silence between words. The older woman's response mirrors this vulnerability. She may share a personal anecdote that reveals her guarded heart or admits the quiet longing she has tried to ignore. Her voice is steady but tinged with emotion, her body language open yet tentative, a hand brushing against his sleeve, a subtle lean toward him as she speaks, or a slow exhale that conveys relief in letting the truth out. These gestures enhance the emotional intimacy, making their connection feel tangible and YouTube-safe affectionate. Physical touches remain small, but charged with meaning. A light touch on the forearm, a fleeting brush of fingers, or their shoulders touching as they shift closer, all communicate trust, tenderness, and desire without crossing boundaries. Each movement is deliberate, allowing the audience to feel the warmth and emotional closeness while maintaining the story's slow burn, respectful tone. By the end of this part, there's a quiet shift. The characters' emotional walls have softened, and an unspoken understanding has emerged. The narrator leaves with a sense of exhilaration and cautious hope, recalling the subtle intimacy of her glance, the warmth of her hand, and the ease of their shared silence. She, too, feels the resonance of their connection, reflecting on the rare comfort and attention he brings into her life. The audience is left with a sense of emotional fulfillment. The tension has reached a peak, but the story still flows naturally toward the gradual, heartfelt resolution that will come in parts 6 and 7. Part 6 is where the story shifts from tension and emotional climax to shared warmth and deepening connection. The male narrator and the older woman have already experienced vulnerability and confession, and now the narrative focuses on how their emotional bond manifests in gentle, meaningful intimacy. The goal here is to make the audience feel the comfort, security, and quiet joy of two people gradually coming closer, while keeping the romance respectful and slow-burning. The setting should evoke a sense of privacy and serenity. A quiet evening at her apartment with soft lamplight, a peaceful stroll through a moonlit garden, or sitting on a park bench with the city lights twinkling in the distance. Sensory details anchor the moment. The faint scent of her perfume, the softness of a shared blanket, the warmth of his hand lightly brushing hers, or the comforting rhythm of her voice as she talks about something personal. These details create a fully immersive experience for viewers, emphasizing emotional closeness over overt romance. The focus in this part is on shared routines and gentle gestures that communicate trust and affection. Perhaps they cook together, and their hands meet as they chop vegetables or stir a simmering pan, causing brief, shy smiles. Maybe they sit together reading or sketching, and the simple act of leaning closer to share the same book or view becomes a tender moment. Each ordinary activity is imbued with emotional resonance, showing that intimacy is built through attention, shared experience, and subtle physical cues rather than dramatic declarations. Physical affection continues to be non-sexual but deeply meaningful. A hand resting briefly on her back as they step through a doorway, a gentle squeeze of the fingers when laughing at an inside joke, or the comforting press of her head against his shoulder, all convey a warmth that is palpable yet appropriate for a YouTube-friendly slow-burn romance. These touches highlight the growing ease and trust between them, allowing the audience to feel their bond without needing explicit romance. Dialogue in this part is soft, reflective, and layered with subtext. They exchange stories, personal reflections, or memories that reveal more of their personalities, hopes, and fears. The narrator notices her subtle gestures, the way her lips curve when she's amused, the way she tucks hair behind her ear when deep in thought, or the slight pause before she speaks when something touches her emotionally. These observations reinforce his admiration and the deepening connection, showing the audience that attraction is about more than surface-level desire. It's rooted in empathy and understanding. By the end of part 6, the relationship feels solidified yet still delicate, like a plant that has been nurtured with care. The audience senses that they are not just drawn together by physical attraction or curiosity, but by genuine emotional resonance. The narrator feels a quiet contentment, a sense of home in her presence, while she reflects on the rare ease and emotional safety he provides. The story is now poised for the final part, where these tender bonds will resolve in a warm, emotionally satisfying conclusion. Part 7 is the story's culmination, where the emotional tension and intimacy built over the previous 6 parts find a gentle, satisfying resolution. The male narrator and the older woman have traversed curiosity, hesitation, and vulnerability. Now, their connection is fully acknowledged, emotionally secure, and mutually cherished. The goal here is to leave the audience with a warm, lingering sense of fulfillment while maintaining the story's slow burn, YouTube-appropriate tone. The setting should evoke comfort, serenity, and the intimacy of shared space. Perhaps a quiet evening on a balcony watching the city lights, a sunlit cafe where they first met, or a park bench bathed in golden afternoon light. Sensory-rich details bring the scene to life. The warmth of her hand resting lightly in his, the soft sway of leaves in the breeze, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with fresh air, and the subtle hum of distant life creating a calm backdrop. Every detail underscores the emotional harmony between them, allowing viewers to feel the depth of their bond. This part emphasizes mutual recognition and emotional presence. The narrator notices the ease with which they share silence, the comfort in lingering glances, and the small, deliberate gestures that convey unspoken love. Her fingers brushing his as they reach for a shared cup of coffee, the tilt of her head resting gently on his shoulder, or the warmth of her arm around his back as they walk side by side. These moments demonstrate that intimacy has grown naturally from emotional understanding rather than haste or physical attraction alone. Dialogue in this final chapter is soft, reflective, and affirming. They exchange thoughts that celebrate their connection, acknowledgement of the unusual but profound nature of their bond, quiet appreciation of shared vulnerability, and light-hearted teasing that conveys comfort and joy. The conversation is punctuated with pauses where words are unnecessary, her laughter filling the space, his smile lingering, the subtle tension of closeness resolved into tender affection. This reinforces the story's theme that emotional depth, honesty, and patience are the foundation of lasting connection. Physical affection remains gentle and meaningful, a hand lingering on her lower back, a brief intertwining of fingers, or a soft cheek-to-cheek brush as they part or lean into one another. Each gesture carries emotional weight, making viewers feel the significance of trust, respect, and warmth in their relationship. There is no rush or overt romance. Instead, the intimacy feels natural, earned, and deeply satisfying. By the end of Part 7, the characters share a quietly joyful equilibrium. The narrator feels a sense of calm and fulfillment, appreciating not just her presence, but the depth of connection they've cultivated together. She, in turn, experiences comfort and quiet happiness, recognizing that her emotional walls have been met with patience and understanding. If multiple women were part of the story, this moment also allows for believable inclusivity, showing harmonious emotional bonds among all characters without forced drama. The audience is left with a warm, resonant conclusion. The slow burn journey has reached emotional satisfaction. Romantic tension has resolved into trust, affection, and mutual admiration. The story ends naturally, echoing the idea that love is as much about emotional intimacy and presence as it is about passion, leaving viewers with a sense of hope, comfort, and lingering warmth.